Archaeologists made an incredible discovery in the deserts of western China. They opened a coffin that had been buried for around 2,700 years. Inside was a man with blue eyes, believed to be about 45 years old when he died. He wasn't buried alone. Beside him were a harp, horse equipment, and nearly 2 pounds of cannabis. Even more surprising, the plant had remained green after thousands of years underground. Researchers believe the man was a shaman. The cannabis may have been placed in the tomb as a special gift for the afterlife, but this wasn't the beginning of humanity's relationship with cannabis. To find that story, we need to go much further back. Around 12,000 years ago, people in East Asia were beginning to experiment with farming. They were searching for useful plants to grow. One plant quickly stood out: cannabis. It was incredibly useful. Its fibers could be turned into rope. It could be woven into clothing. Its seeds could be eaten. Its oils could be extracted. And it was also used in traditional medicine. For ancient people, finding cannabis was like discovering several tools in a single plant. One of the earliest written references comes from an ancient Chinese medical text known as the Pen Cao Qing. The text described cannabis as a treatment for a variety of health problems, including pain and illness. Over time, cannabis spread far beyond China. It traveled along the Silk Road. Merchants carried valuable goods across Asia, and cannabis appears to have traveled with them. One important trade route passed through the Pamir Mountains of Central Asia, and that's where archaeologists uncovered something remarkable. At a burial site called Jirzankal Cemetery, researchers examined several tombs dating back more than 2,500 years. Inside, they found wooden braziers filled with burned stones. These ancient containers had once been used in ceremonies. When scientists analyzed the remains, they discovered traces of cannabis. It was some of the oldest direct evidence of people intentionally smoking the plant, but there was something even more surprising. This wasn't ordinary cannabis growing in the wild. Tests showed it contained much higher levels of THC than nearby plants. In other words, these people weren't picking random plants. They were intentionally choosing stronger varieties. Researchers believe they heated stones in large braziers and placed cannabis on top. As the plant burned, thick smoke filled the air. The people gathered around and breathed it in, together during funeral ceremonies. Think about that for a moment. People may have been using cannabis in burial rituals over 2,500 years ago. Around the same time, a Greek historian named Herodotus was traveling through Central Asia. There, he encountered a group of nomadic warriors known as the Scythians. The Scythians were famous fighters. They lived on horseback, carried powerful bows, and spent much of their lives on the move. But one of their customs caught Herodotus's attention. He watched them build small tents and place cannabis on red-hot stones. The tents quickly filled with smoke. According to Herodotus, the Scythians greatly enjoyed the experience. He even wrote about it in his records. For many years, historians wondered if he had exaggerated the story. Maybe it was just a colorful tale. Then everything changed. In 1947, archaeologists excavated ancient frozen tombs in Siberia. The tombs had remained sealed for more than 2,000 years. Inside, researchers discovered tent structures, heated stones, and cannabis seeds. The evidence matched Herodotus's description almost perfectly. It turned out he had been telling the truth, but the discoveries didn't stop there. In 2013, archaeologists uncovered another Scythian burial site in the Caucasus Mountains. Inside were several beautiful gold cups. When scientists tested residue left inside them, they made an unexpected discovery. The cups contained traces of cannabis and opium. That means some ancient Scythians may have combined different psychoactive substances thousands of years ago, and just when it seemed the story couldn't get any stranger, another discovery appeared, this time in Israel. At an ancient shrine known as Tel Arad, researchers examined 2 altars dating back around 2,700 years. One altar contained traces of frankincense, a common religious offering. That wasn't surprising, but the second altar was different. When scientists analyzed the remains, they found traces of cannabis. And that discovery raised a fascinating question. Why would cannabis be used inside a sacred religious site? And there was another surprising detail. The cannabis wasn't burned by itself. Researchers found that it had been mixed with animal dung. Why? Because it helped the plant burn more slowly and produce more smoke. That means the people preparing these rituals knew exactly what they were doing, and they weren't alone. Wherever cannabis appeared, people seemed to find a use for it. Part of the reason may be hidden inside our own bodies. Humans naturally produce a molecule called anandamide. Its name comes from an ancient Sanskrit word meaning bliss. What's interesting is that compounds in cannabis interact with the same system. It's almost like the body probably already had a lock, and cannabis happened to fit the key. Maybe that's one reason the plant became so important in so many cultures. One place where cannabis gained a special role was India. In fact, India has one of the oldest known traditions involving the plant. An ancient sacred text called the Atharva Veda listed cannabis among its important plants. Over time, it became connected to Lord Shiva, one of the major gods in Hindu tradition. A drink called bhang, made from cannabis and other ingredients, became part of religious celebrations. According to tradition, Shiva used the drink to find peace after a great struggle. Even today, bhang is still consumed during festivals such as Holi and Maha Shivaratri. That means a tradition thousands of years old is still alive. But the story of cannabis didn't stop in India. Fire plant continued its journey across Asia. In China, around 200 AD, a physician named Hua Tuo was making remarkable discoveries. He reportedly mixed cannabis with wine and gave it to patients before surgery. The goal was simple: reduce pain, help patients remain calm during medical procedures. If true, it was an incredibly advanced idea for its time. Centuries before modern anesthesia, Hua Tuo may have been experimenting with ways to make surgery less painful. His reputation quickly spread. Eventually, word reached Cao Cao, one of the most powerful rulers in China. Cao suffered from severe headaches, and Hua Tuo became one of the few people capable of helping him. There was a problem. Hua Tuo wanted a different life. He wanted to return home. He wanted to treat ordinary people. He didn't want to spend the rest of his life serving a powerful warlord, and that decision would change everything. But Hua Tuo's story did not end well. The powerful ruler, Cao Cao, believed Hua Tuo was refusing to serve him. He saw it as a personal insult, so he had the doctor arrested. Hua Tuo was thrown into prison. Not long after, he was executed. Before his death, he tried to save his medical knowledge. He offered his writings to a prison guard, but the guard was too frightened to accept them. So Hua Tuo made a heartbreaking decision. He burned the documents himself. Whatever secrets were written there disappeared forever. And to this day, nobody knows exactly what was lost. But the history of cannabis holds even stranger stories. One of them comes from Central Africa. According to historical accounts, a tribe in the Congo adopted cannabis in a very unusual way. Over time, it became an important part of their culture. The group became known as the Bena Riamba, which means sons of hemp. Their community was built around shared rituals and social unity. They even called their territory Lubuku, a word associated with friendship and peace. Their greeting was moyo. Interestingly, the word could mean both hemp and life. To them, the two ideas were deeply connected. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, cannabis was playing a very different role. In Europe, hemp had become one of the most important crops. Ships depended on it. Ropes were made from it. Sails were made from it. Without hemp, long ocean voyages would have been far more difficult. When Europeans arrived in the Americas, they brought hemp with them, not because of religion, not because of culture, because it was useful. At first, hemp spread quickly through the colonies, but farmers soon faced a choice: grow hemp or grow tobacco. Tobacco earned more money. Most farmers chose tobacco. The government wasn't happy about that. Leaders believed hemp was too important to ignore. Eventually, officials stopped encouraging farmers to grow it. Instead, they passed laws requiring it. For some colonists, growing hemp became a legal obligation. That's how valuable the crop was at the time. For generations, cannabis and hemp remained a normal part of everyday life. People used them for practical purposes. There was little controversy. Then everything changed. In 1930, a man named Harry Anslinger became head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. He would hold that position for more than 3 decades, and his actions would completely transform the way cannabis was viewed in America. But in the 1900s, the public image of cannabis began to change. One man played a major role in that shift. His name was Harry Anslinger. In 1930, he became head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. Anslinger launched a campaign against cannabis. He often connected the drug to minority communities and immigrant groups. He also criticized jazz culture and many of the musicians associated with it. One of his most famous targets was singer Billie Holiday. At the time, she was becoming known for performing songs that challenged racism and social injustice. Anslinger wanted the public to fear cannabis. Even the language began to change. Instead of using the word cannabis, he promoted the term marijuana. Many historians believe this helped make the substance seem more foreign and unfamiliar to the public. Story linking cannabis to crime and violence began appearing more frequently. But there was a problem. Many medical experts disagreed with those claims. When doctors were asked about the dangers of cannabis, a large number did not see it as a major threat, yet their opinions were often ignored. Then, in 1937, a major law was passed in the United States 1968, it became known as the Marijuana Tax Act. The law placed strict controls on cannabis and hemp. Decades later, the restrictions became even stronger. In 1970, cannabis was placed in Schedule Y under U.S. federal law. This category was reserved for substances considered highly dangerous and lacking accepted medical use. The decision shocked many critics. After all, cannabis had been cultivated by humans for thousands of years, long before modern nations existed, long before written history in many parts of the world. Yet now it was being treated as one of the most restricted substances in the country. Years later, another surprising detail emerged. John Ehrlichman, who had served as a senior advisor in the Nixon administration, gave an interview about the policies of that era. His comments sparked major debate. According to Ehrlichman, political leaders wanted to target certain groups they viewed as opponents. He claimed drug policies became one of the tools used to achieve that goal. His statement remains one of the most discussed quotes in the history of the drug war. Then, in 1988, another important review took place. A judge named Francis Young examined years of medical evidence related to cannabis. After studying the research, he reached a different conclusion. Young argued that cannabis should not be treated the same way as substances like heroin. He recommended changing its legal classification. But despite the recommendation, the debate was far from over, and it continues even today. But the story didn't end there. Despite the recommendation, the DEA chose not to change the classification. Cannabis remained exactly where it was, and that creates an interesting perspective. Humans have been using cannabis for roughly 12,000 years. The period in which it has been illegal is only a small fraction of that history. For most of human civilization, cannabis was simply a part of everyday life. People used it for practical purposes. They turned its fibers into rope and cloth. They used it in medicine, and in some cultures, it played a role in ceremony and tradition across different continents and different time periods. People found their own reasons to keep it around. Some saw it as a useful crop, others saw it as something spiritual. For certain communities, it became deeply connected to their way of life. And maybe that's what makes this story so fascinating. Not the laws, not the politics, but the fact that so many different cultures, separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years, all found value in the same plant. Think back to that ancient shaman buried in the desert, the man with the harp, the horse gear, and nearly 2 pounds of carefully preserved cannabis. He knew nothing about modern debates, nothing about government policy, nothing about drug classifications. Yet the people who buried him believed that plant was important enough to place beside him for his final journey. And perhaps that tells us something important. The history of cannabis isn't just the history of a plant. It's also the history of human culture, belief, and curiosity, a story that has been growing alongside us for thousands of years.